Hello, and thank you for listening to the Testing the Spirits podcast live edition. Today, we're going to be covering this interview between Frank Turek and Kirk Cameron. Last week, we covered the Kirk Cameron interview with Eric Metaxas, which that was a real doozy since Metaxas not only downplayed annihilationism, and Frank Turek's going to do the same thing, unfortunately. But not only did Metaxas downplay annihilationism, he said that the real heretics are basically, they're the people calling Kirk out. They're the real heretics. So it's your fault. Kirk is amazing, but you're the problem. And Frank Turek is going to repeat something similar where Kirk is great. Hey, everybody, the great Kirk Cameron, he's amazing, but it's the fundamentalists who are the real issue. Yeah. So I mean, last week with the Metaxas thing, that was completely upside down, but Kirk is clearly on a PR tour, a public relations tour, where his celebrity friends are all having him on their podcasts. So just so they can let the world know that Kirk is still okay to listen to. Annihilationism is no big deal. As long as you say you believe in hell, you can totally redefine what that means. No problem. And remember, I said from the start, the big issue here is the normalizing of false doctrine within the church. And it's sad to see Christian apologists, the people who should be holding the line more than anyone else, or as much as anyone else, they're the guys folding to this, right? Westhoff came out, he's the new big apologist. He was the first guy to come out defending annihilationism as it's not heresy. It's fine to believe that, apparently. And now, sad that Frank Turek is taking the same approach. So yeah, Kirk's celebrity friends are helping him out on this PR tour. And it's very clear with this interview that Frank Turek is still fully supportive of Kirk Cameron. So much so that you'll see Frank introduces him on the podcast as the great Kirk Cameron. Watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, is God unjust if he punishes people for all eternity in hell? Well, my friend Kirk Cameron really kind of stirred up a hornet's nest about a month and a half ago when he went public with a conversation he had with his son over this issue. And a lot of people have spoken about it. So we wanted to have Kirk on the show to get his perspective again on it. So here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the great Kirk Cameron.
Okay, so when the podcast starts out that way, it's sort of like Hellgate. The fix is in from the start. There's not going to be any discernment here. It's one friend supporting another, no matter what. Just like, again, Eric Metaxas. He publicly claims, Eric Metaxas, you saw this last week, and this was a shock to a lot of people, that Eric Metaxas, who's apparently friends with Kirk Cameron, Metaxas publicly on his Christian TV show openly talks about how he loves drag queens. And did Kirk admonish him for that? Is he going to admonish him for that? No. Just like these guys aren't going to admonish Kirk for denying the biblical teaching on hell, because it's a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of relationship. You promote me so I can get some of your followers. I'll promote you so you can get some of my followers. And it's like Wes Huff said on the Gavin Ortland podcast, it's networking. That's what this is. But the big problem with that is that nobody seems to care about sound doctrine. It's about growing your platform, getting the next podcast out, and God's truth somewhere gets lost in the mix because you can teach annihilationism, which is really a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, everybody knows that it's most associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses, which are a cult. And yet, in Al Mohler, you even have theologians like Al Mohler saying this is a fatal error. And yet all these guys come out and say it's no big deal. Could it be that they're taking this position simply because they're buddies with Kirk Cameron and they don't want to disrupt the friendship and the networking? Well, that's the way it looks. That's the way it looks. So I think you're going to see that here in this podcast. that, Hellgate, Frank Turek is going to say that Hellgate was great. Kirk is just trying to help people get answers. And I don't know why I expected better of Frank Turek, but not only some people have been saying that he's been going downhill ever since he hooked up with TPUSA. That seems to be the consensus. I mean, if you had asked me a year ago, what do you think of Frank Turek? I had generally a positive impression of him. Same with Kirk Cameron, but I mean, it's sad. But here's the thing. Somebody said, well, you're just being critical. This guy, he has a large platform. You're just being critical because he has a large platform. Well, that's not true. I mean, first of all, if he had no platform, I would never hear what he says. But there's a lot of people who have a large platform that I really like. That has nothing to do with it. The problem is people who really love guys like Turek, they will respect him so much when Turek is okay with annihilationism. This is the way people behave, that, well, if he's okay with it, it must not be a big deal. So if Turek is going to give Kirk Cameron a green light in believing annihilationism, therefore I can believe it with no consequences because Frank Turek doesn't see the issue. See, this is the little leavening the whole lump problem that we've been talking about. So again, you're going to see in this interview that Frank Turek, he loves Kirk Cameron. He's on his side, clearly, but it's the fundamentalists who are the real issue. Yes, so you'll see that towards the end. Frank takes a couple shots at the fundamentalists, just like Eric Metaxas saying the discernment ministries are the real heretics or whatever. And but Kirk Cameron is just terrific. He is the great Kirk Cameron. So one more thing before I get into the clips. I think this is worth pointing out for those of you who do not know who Frank Turek is. So he's a Christian apologist. He goes around, yes, he was associated or still is with TPUSA, but he goes around on college campuses and answers kids' questions, college students, their questions. And he does, I'm sure if you've seen some of those videos, it's like, yeah, he's done some good work. But I think this is worth pointing out that Frank Turek was trained and at least to some degree was a disciple of Norman Geisler. And you say, well, who's Norman Geisler and why would that matter? Norman Geisler attended a Jesuit school. Okay, Geisler attended a Catholic, not just a Catholic school, but a Jesuit school. And Geisler was known in the apologetic community as being quite favorable towards Roman Catholics and towards Roman Catholicism. And there are clips. This is the one thing that I might have said, again, 6 months, a year ago, if you had asked me, what's my impression of Frank Turek? I like Frank Turek. I want to like Frank Turek. I really do. I've heard some good stuff from him. But I have heard the stuff where he goes soft on Roman Catholics. I mean, that would have been my one critique. So that's, again, worth pointing out. Norman Geisler, again, who trained Frank Turek. Geisler was also a big fan and big defender of Andy Stanley. So I just bring that up because many of these apologists, right, they're very good. Yes, they're very good at answering questions, but they tend to have a lot of blind spots. Just consider the big apologists over the past 25 years. Norman Geisler was part of the older generation. But who are the big guys over the past 20 years? Ravi Zacharias, right? William Lane Craig. If you followed or know anything about those two guys, you know it's not good. But today, the big apologists today are Frank Turek, and now the big guy is, the new golden child is Wesley Huff. So Frank Turek, again, while being a student of Geisler, this is also worth pointing out that Frank Turek, a lot of people know him because he was with Charlie Kirk when Kirk was assassinated. He was actually the guy in the white hat that people were spreading the conspiracy around. You remember the guy in the white hat doing the baseball signals, and they said he was signaling to the shooter. Listen, I don't think that's true at all. I think I don't believe that for a second. But Frank Turek was the guy standing with Charlie Kirk. So yes, whatever you think about Charlie Kirk, Frank Turek was his religious mentor. And I know a lot of people love Charlie Kirk. Some people don't. But one thing I think is safe to say about TPUSA and Charlie Kirk is that they are or were too ecumenical. And I'm afraid that Frank Turek is kind of showing that same thing here by still willing to endorse Kirk Cameron after everything that has happened. So when you start getting too ecumenical and getting too involved in politics, it almost always leads to compromise if you don't, have that discerning mind where you're a good Berean and you just keep an eye on this stuff. So I think it's important that we do that. But let's get into the clips. This is clip number 2 of the Frank Turek, Kirk Cameron interview.
Whether hell is eternal conscious torment or it's annihilationism, I don't want that, even though it would be fair if I got it, because that's what justice is. So I guess what I would say about this debate, first of all, it's always good to debate issues. It's very bad, particularly for young people, to shut them down, to say to them, well, you can't even ask that question. You want to put everything on the table and work it out intellectually.
Okay, so in fairness, Frank Turek does, as far as I can tell, he does hold to ECT, eternal conscious torment, which I'll say it again, is a redundant term. The Bible just talks about torment, and it is eternal punishment or eternal torment. It wasn't abundantly clear that that's what Frank Turek believes, but I'm pretty sure it is. I think it did come out, but again, he seemed to not be real strong on the position because at another point, you'll see it that Frank Turek, he starts quoting C.S. Lewis like all these other guys. And C.S. Lewis did redefine hell. But Frank is talking about the debate over hell, which, yeah, fine, debate it. Get in people who are really going to stand for the traditional view. But that's not happening. Everything I've seen from Kirk Cameron, Gavin Ortland, Eric Metaxas, now Frank Turek, they all seem to be downplaying this as a secondary issue. But then Frank shifts the attention over to young people, how you can't be shutting down young people. They have their questions. You can't shut them down. But who's doing that? Really, who is doing that on the internet? I assume Frank is talking about Kirk's son. Listen, if Kirk's son, James Cameron, has questions, fine. He wants to talk to his dad, great. That's what he should do. But don't do it publicly, okay? If a child or a young person has questions and they're struggling with their faith, you don't air that out in public on the internet, okay? That's number one. And number two, let's be honest, your questions, if he's talking about James Cameron, these questions sound a lot less like questions and more like you're just undermining the scriptural teaching and advocating for annihilationism. So let's play now clip number 3.
Because there are passages that you mentioned earlier that seem to imply, even John 3:16. I'm just playing the other side here, ladies and gentlemen, just to, John 3:16 says that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Okay, well, why didn't it say shall not live in hell, but have eternal life with Jesus? So, there are passages that support the conditional view.
No, there's no passages that support the conditional view, and John 3:16 does not support that view. You say, well, yeah, but he's just playing the other side. No, what he needs to be doing is rebuking the other side, because the other side is wrong. It's a cultic teaching. It's not biblical. And for you to, take up the other side of the argument, it's one thing if you're expressing the other side, because I'll do this. Okay, here's what the other side says, but let me tell you why it's wrong, right? Well, that's not what he almost seemed to be arguing for. I know he probably wasn't. But no, John 3:16 that's not a verse that supports conditionalism or annihilationism. Not at all. You say, yeah, but it says that they'll perish. Right. And how do you define perishing? Yeah, you got to go to the clear verses that actually tell you what that looks like. And that's clear in Mark chapter 9. The worm dieth not, the fire is not quenched, Revelation 20, Revelation 14, suffering day and night. Like, we know the verses. So you can't just isolate a verse and say, well, perish means go out of existence. That's not what it means. That's not what John 3:16 means. So, and Frank Turek knows that. So how can he say that that verse supports conditionalism? It's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. And by the way, I do want to address this comment that I saw. Let's see. A Sure Guide to Love 8903 says, oh, that's not the comment. They said, let's see, where is it? These comments, they disappear all of a sudden, and I did want to address it. Okay, where is it? Now it's gone. They said that, let's see, where was it? Okay, here it is. Let's be fair, because I mentioned Eric Metaxas and what he said about calling discernment people heretics. A Sure Guide to Love says, let's be fair, Eric was joking when he called us heretics. It was bad, but we need to acknowledge that he was just kidding. I don't think he was. Based on what? There was no indication. I watched the entire thing in context. There was no indication at all that he was kidding. Like somebody said about the drag queen comments, Eric Metaxas talking about his favorite drag queen. Oh, he was just kidding. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. So I don't believe that's true at all. Trust me, I can tell when something is clipped out of context, or I check on it, or if somebody meant something and they were just joking around. Like, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe that's the case. But all right, let's watch clip number 4. We got 8 clips total. So this is clip number 4 of the Frank Turek, Kirk Cameron interview. And just a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, we'll get to them in the second half of the show. So here's clip number 4.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you talked about this, you didn't say you necessarily agree with the conditionalist view, but you're
all right, let me stop. This really irritated me. This is why I wanted to do this podcast, because Frank Turek was helping Kirk Cameron repeat this falsehood. Oh, you're just asking questions, Kirk. Oh, Kirk, you're not even really settled on this, right? Yeah. You're not even settled. You're not teaching annihilationism. No, you're just asking questions, blah, blah, blah. It's totally false. This is a farce. And yet Frank Turek, again, he should know better, but he helps Kirk Cameron repeat this falsehood. So let's let it finish.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you talked about this, you didn't say you necessarily agree with the conditionalist view, but you're considering it. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I said that I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, come on. Give me a break. If you've been following this whole story, you know that is completely dishonest. Now, maybe Frank Turek hasn't been following it, and, Kirk told him that beforehand. Well, then shame on him for not doing, the fact checking. But give me a break. All right, clip number 5.
Kirk moderated a discussion between 4 scholars, 2 for the conditional view and 2 for what's called eternal conscious torment. And you can see that on his YouTube channel, The Kirk Cameron Show. It's called Hellgate, the Christian debate we're afraid to have. It's episode 102. It's over 2.5 hours long. It's well worth watching. I just watched it today. Very fine scholars on there that get in and go back and forth and deal with all the different possible interpretation.
Okay, so if Frank Turek really watched Hellgate, and if he really thinks that Gavin Ortlund is great, honestly, have you been following Gavin Ortlund? Did you see what he posted this week? The guy who's advocating for evolution in the church. He thinks universalism is just a secondary issue. You can be a universalist and be a true Christian. Gavin Ortlund. So you're telling me that Frank Turek thinks that Gavin Ortlund is great, and he's a fine scholar. And the Hellgate panel, oh, that was great. Oh, yeah, they were really digging into the truth. again, it's almost like there's two possibilities. Either Frank Turek didn't actually watch it and he's just, just puffing up Kirk Cameron, or he watched it and he's a lot more clueless than I thought. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't like saying that or thinking that, but some of you guys saw Hellgate. The whole thing was a complete, what's the term? It was fake. It was rigged. Nobody on the panel actually held to the traditional view of hell. Even the two guys, Gavin Ortland and Paul Copan, who supposedly were standing up for ECT, eternal conscious torment, the traditional view, they both agreed that there's not actually fire in hell. And that's just where God lets you do your own thing and find happiness your own way. What in the world? I mean, does Frank Turek really not see the issue? So I don't know. I'm trying to be as fair and as nice as I can be, but this is really, really bad, really frustrating. So you can see that Frank Turek is running interference for Kirk Cameron. Hey, you're my buddy. Let me help you out. And this is doing a great disservice to the body of Christ. So let's watch clip number 6.
As we do so, that's iron sharpening iron. And we can do it with gentleness and respect toward one another. We need to follow Ephesians 4:29, not letting any unwholesome words come out of our mouth, but only that which is helpful for the building up of the people who hear it.
Old farts, beware. Old church farts.
Respect toward one another.
Old church farts.
Not letting any unwholesome words come out of our mouth.
Because remember, the old farts are on their way out.
So you tell me, because this was part of the podcast that Kirk Cameron was talking about, how we need to be respectful. We need to not let any corrupt communication coming out of our mouth. We need to be respectful of other people. And yet Kirk Cameron, over the past couple of weeks, has been attacking elderly people, calling them a bunch of old farts. And he didn't just do it once. He didn't just do it twice. Matter of fact, he didn't just do it 3. He keeps saying it in podcast after podcast and totally disrespecting his elders. But he has the audacity to go on the Frank Turek podcast and talk about how you need to be respectful to people. And, but all these older guys that disagree with us, they're just a bunch of old farts. Like, that's not okay. That's not okay. But again, is Frank Turek going to admonish that? No. Is he going to rebuke the annihilationism? No. And I posted a clip earlier. It was a YouTube short earlier of another guy, speaking. This is just not the way Christian leaders should talk. They say, well, yeah, but you shouldn't be critical of people either. This is the only response I've ever heard. The other side, this is what they say. Well, you just shouldn't be critical. You should be more loving. When did love mean acceptance of false doctrine? Have you ever read the epistles? Have you ever read what Jesus said to the scribes and Pharisees for teaching false doctrine? Have you ever read what Paul said to the Judaizers? Listen, I'm way too soft, if anything. Read what the Apostle Paul said to the Judaizers about what they should do and cut themselves off. And like, the prophets and apostles were far more harsh than anything you're going to see on this podcast. But maybe I should be harsher, and I'll consider that, because I know some of you think I'm too light on these guys. But let's play clip number 7. Maybe this one will fire me up a little more.
Kirk, some people say that, well, evangelism might be blunted if you take a conditional viewpoint. What are they misunderstanding when they say that?
Well, I don't think evangelism is blunted by that. In fact, there are some people in some cultures who are so terrified of non-existence that many of the old writers said that people, if given the choice, would gladly prefer to be preserved forever and tormented and still have some kind of agency than to be completely annihilated and disappear.
Yeah, who was it that said hell, the doors of hell are locked on the inside? I know Lewis said that.
Okay, so there you go. Frank Turek is quoting C.S. Lewis. This is the way hell really is like. You send yourself there. Now, obviously, based on your choices, yeah, you're punished based on what you choose. I mean, I get that, but it's not locked from the inside. I mean, that's a total reinvention where hell is just your conscience. I'm going to release a video of Michael Knowles and his interview with Kirk Cameron. Members of the channel have already seen it, but I'll release that in a couple days. Same thing, quoting C.S. Lewis, siding with Lewis over the Bible. But you heard Kirk Cameron repeat this farce that, who is the guy? Chris Date. He said, well, people take issue with eternal conscious torment, but really annihilationism is worse. Annihilationism is even more harsh. People would rather be eternally tormented forever than be annihilated. That is not true. I've never met a single person in my life. I don't believe there's anyone out there who could honestly say they would rather be tormented forever and ever than be annihilated. And yet Kirk is saying that, no, people would really rather do that than be. That's obviously not true, and everybody knows it. And yet Frank Turek is there like, yeah. Seriously? Come on. So, and then there's one other thing I wanted to address. Let me just play the first 10 seconds, because you see that Frank Turek he's defending Kirk Cameron. He's on Kirk's side. Kirk, there's people who think that you're wrong and that this is going to affect evangelism. Kirk, tell us why they're wrong. So obviously Frank is totally siding with Kirk Cameron here. Listen.
Kirk, some people say that, well, evangelism might be blunted if you take a conditional viewpoint. What are they misunderstanding when they say that?
Yeah, so they're misunderstanding, Kirk. I agree, Kirk. Now, does annihilationism blunt evangelism? Well, you better believe it does, because the unsaved person, and we've mentioned this before, the atheist, the agnostic, the unsaved person is already expecting to die and go out of existence. They've made peace with that. Well, maybe they haven't, but I mean, that's what they're expecting. So if hell is really annihilationism, then in a sense, they're right. They are going to go out of existence. So what is there to be saved from? There's no urgency. If hell isn't eternal conscious torment, if hell isn't what people think it is, then what are you being saved from? We already know that people love their sin, so they don't want to be saved from their sin. This is one of the main reasons why people don't follow Christ, because they love their sin too much. And then if they're just going to die and maybe suffer for a little bit, but be annihilated, that's already what they're expecting, to just go out of existence. So what is there to be saved from? You better believe it blunts evangelism. There's no urgency in salvation, because why? What's the point? I'm going to have my fun and then I'll cease to exist. What's the big deal? So it's amazing that Frank Turek would say something like that. How does he not understand? Or is he just compromising to support his buddy? I don't know. I don't know what his personal motivations are, but I do know that he's wrong. He's wrong. And it's sad to see. Again, you would think an apologist would be one of the main people upholding biblical truth. Isn't that sort of like their job? I don't know. But here's maybe the worst clip of all. Here is Frank Turek, clip number 8, the final clip, where, yes, he is blaming the fundamentalists. And I think this is probably a story that he's repeating. I don't know if I believe this, but let's hear what he has to say. And at the end, he's going to promote Kirk Cameron's show. Hey, everybody, listen to the Kirk Cameron show because it's great, which is completely reckless and irresponsible. But let's listen to the final clip.
I was just with a friend of mine who said he was brought up in a fundamentalist home in West Virginia. And he said if he ever expressed a question, he would be batted down by and berated for not having enough faith. Like nobody ever gave him any apologetic answers. Nobody ever gave him any evidence. They berated him for not having enough faith. And it wasn't until he discovered apologetics that was his world revolutionized. He went from an agnostic because his mind could not rejoice, or let me put it another way, his heart could not rejoice in what his mind doubted until he got answers. And once he got answers, now he can be fully devoted to the Lord. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do by bringing up these questions. Check out much more at Hellgate. The link will be in the show notes. And also check out Kirk at the Kirk Cameron Show. And lastly, where can they see Iggy and Mr.
Okay, did you catch that part towards the end? Kirk, me, Frank Turek, and us apologists, we're just trying to give people answers. We're just trying to help people. And that's what you're trying to do, Kirk. What? So Kirk Cameron is just trying to help. He's just trying to give people answers. So listen to his show, everybody. Let's direct everyone to the Kirk Cameron Show as him and his son James ask their deconstructive questions. Again, that's irresponsible. The idea that Kirk is he's just asking questions, just trying to help. How can you believe that? But that's what he said. So very disappointing. And then the other part, well, I know this fundamentalist friend of mine, and he just got swatted down every time he tried to ask a question. But then he admits that the guy wasn't even saved at that point. Well, unsaved people don't have faith, Frank, right? I mean, so he was unsaved and he was asking questions. Maybe his questions weren't really questions. Maybe it was like James Cameron, again, trying to undermine biblical truth. But his parents or whoever just said, you need to have more faith. Well, you needed to have faith, period, because again, unsaved people don't have faith. And this isn't, I'll close with this. Apologetics oftentimes is an intellectual exercise. It's like mental sparring, my mind versus your mind, and who can win the debate and who can bring out the facts and who can, beat the other person. I don't know that anyone, I believe there is a place for apologetics. I'm not against apologetics, obviously, but people are not saved by apologetics. People are saved through the preaching of the gospel. And people are saved when they hear the message that you are a sinner. All people have sinned. There's none righteous, no, not one. And that means you, and that means me, and that means everybody. And that we need to be saved because God's wrath abides upon sinners. And unless people repent and put their faith in the gospel, we will face the penalty of our sin, which is not just physical death, it is eternal death, the second death, in the lake of fire, which is described as eternal torment. Oh, you don't believe it's fire, though, do you? You're not a fundamentalist. You don't believe in literal fire. Well, I know that's what the Bible says. I know that Jesus described it as hellfire. And the Luke 16 story of the rich man and Lazarus, he said, I am being tormented in this flame, which is backed up by Mark 9 and Revelation 14 and 20 and all the same verses we keep repeating. So there's no way I can say that fire doesn't mean fire. If somehow in glory, God tells us, oh, hey, guys, that was just symbolic, then, well, I mean, I'm not going to interpret the Bible to mean the opposite of what it says. And I'm not going to downplay the serious nature of hell and say that it's annihilationism, because that's what it is. This is downplaying the teaching of hell. There's nowhere in the Bible that it's teaching annihilationism. I don't care what Frank Turek says. John 3:16 is not a passage backing up conditionalism. That is not true. And that's all I have to say about that, at least for now. But we've been going 34 minutes. We got about 240 people watching. So let me know what you think. This is what we do every live stream. We spend the first half talking about the issue, looking at the clips, looking at what the Bible says. And then we spend the second half seeing what you have to say and what are your questions. So we got everybody at the start. I didn't want to, be too hard on this guy here, because he has some good comments too. But he says a sure guide to love says you can see just about every ministry that needs flagging by how they responded to Kirk and how they responded to the TPUSA halftime show. Okay. So I don't know this person's name. This looks like a new account. I don't remember them commenting before. So, all right, I disagree with you about their Metaxas thing, but I do agree with you here. So thanks I do appreciate you listening. Thank you for commenting. And yeah, I totally agree. If a ministry, if a pastor, if somebody is still promoting Kirk Cameron after this, yeah, that they need to be flagged. Absolutely. And the TPUSA halftime show, I knew that would come up. Kid Rock preached the gospel. Oh, Kid Rock is amazing. He's a Christian now. He's preaching the gospel. It's like, oh my goodness. Read James 2:19. And for those of you who know what we're talking about here, let's put it up on the screen. We were going to do it eventually. Kid Rock is on the left. Come on. So yes, the side on the left, the wide road that says, I believe in God, that's where Kid Rock is. Yeah, he says he believes, supposedly. I mean, he sang about it. It's just a lyric. And everyone went, Kid Rock mentioned Jesus. Yay. It's amazing how gullible people are. But again, this is why we need discernment. This is why we need discernment. But yeah, listen, I'm not against somebody for watching the TPUSA halftime show or thinking that it was better. I understand if you think it was better than the Super Bowl halftime show. But my attitude is when you blend the holy with the profane, it makes it more dangerous. That's the way I see it. But yes, good point. Good point. So let's scroll all the way back. The comments went all the way to the bottom here. So sorry about that. I have to start over. Okay, let me find that comment that I just put on the screen, because we had like 50 comments even before the live stream started. Okay, so here's this guy again, and Robert says, "Can you say brown noser, boys and girls?" I knew you could. Yeah, yeah. Lee Strobel will be next. That's what Army Girl for Christ says. Yeah, Lee Strobel wrote the book, The Case for Christ, which I seem to remember reading it, and I seem to remember thinking it was a good book. And maybe it is a really great book, but Lee Strobel also was a pastor at, what's the guy's name? The big seeker-sensitive mega church, Bill Hybels. Yeah, so Lee Strobel has partnered with Bill Hybels and TBN, so obviously Lee Strobel, we already know he kind of lacks discernment. It doesn't mean he can't write a good book, but you got to be careful. This is all I'm saying. I'm not judging Frank Turek's salvation or anything like that. What I'm saying is, even if you think someone is great and you've heard stuff, and yeah, you think it's wonderful, you can't shut off your brain. We need to test all things. You need to test what I'm saying. You need to be a good Berean and take everything that comes out of my mouth and test it. Because who knows, I could start teaching something crazy. So we need to do this with everybody. It's not about being critical. It's about having discernment. But again, the other side, this is all they do. You know, judge not. Don't be critical, right?
Touch not the anointed. Touch not the anointed.
That's all you get. So we need to teach people to think biblically. Okay. Yeah, Rossi says, Kirk and Frank, it's friends over truth. I mean, that's kind of the way it seems. Yeah, I think this is what I was referring to. So A Sure Guide to Love says, when a woman asked Turek about whether her Roman Catholic mother could be saved, Turek claimed that since Catholics believe in the death, burial, and resurrection, that it's no issue. Yes, that is the clip I was thinking of. And it's like, okay, everybody, what's wrong with that? Who knows? Who can give the right answer? Do Catholics believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ? Well, of course, yes, they would say that. Now, some people would say it's a different Christ, and we can have that debate. The real problem, and the most obvious problem, is that Catholics are trusting in their works. Now, if there is a Roman Catholic who is truly trusting in the gospel, then they would be saved despite their Catholicism. But no, the Roman Catholic Church teaches salvation by faith plus works. So it's not that they don't believe in Jesus. Obviously, they say they believe in Jesus. It's what are they trusting in? Are they trusting in the gospel, or are they trusting in the gospel plus good works, plus the sacrament, plus, this, that, and the other thing? Because that would classify as a different gospel according to Galatians 1. So, and again, Frank Turek has to know that. But yeah, you get an emotional question, and then you want to give people an answer that's going to make them feel better. I mean, I get the temptation, but that is the first step of compromise. And I think it has to do with being, having the fear of man, not wanting to upset people. So I think that's part of it as well. Yeah, the Bereans are here mentions, I heard of Turek from the hand signals to the shooter of the Charlie Kirk theory. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that must have been a tough week for him. But he was Charlie Kirk's, one of his mentors anyway. Right. Let's see. Here's another comment. Elaine says, I should not be a golden child in the true church. Because I said Wes Huff is the new golden child. Right. Yeah, Jordan Riley put out a video about Wes Huff yesterday, and not too many people have been critical of Wes Huff, but I thought he did a good job really just showing what Wes has been saying. It was like, okay, this is kind of a problem. And I agree. But yeah, anytime someone's like the new big thing, people typically want to jump on the bandwagon. Let's see. Somebody says a degree in apologetics is not a real degree. Is Frank Turek, does he have his doctorate? Is he Dr. Frank Turek? I don't know. I don't know what his background is, or what degrees he holds or doesn't hold. Yeah, Army Girl for Christ, a simple statement, give the young people the truth. Right. The young people are asking questions. Fine. Okay, give them the truth. Well, the thing is, they don't like the truth. They know what the Bible says. They just don't like what it says. Yeah, Bill is absolutely right to ask this. I wonder if Kirk will ever, in capital letters, will he ever debate this issue publicly with someone who actually disagrees with him? Now, he's going to say, well, Paul Copan and Gavin Ortland did disagree. No, I like really disagree. Like they think this is a real big problem, and they're going to, give you a real challenge. And I don't think Kirk will ever do that, because there's no way he can win. So yeah, he's playing Twister with the Bible. Another comment, Frank, you are really good with a lot of apologetic answers, and I appreciate that. But really, brother, you have been too philosophical. Not as bad as William Lane Craig, but please consider that. So if by some chance Frank Turek ever listens to this, I hope he will at least consider what other people are saying. And Cry Aloud Ministries just said, Frank, you need to repent. Yeah, Donna says that Frank is also against election. I know he's a big anti-Calvinist guy. What does he say about election? Because again, did we talk about this last week or the week before? Like, election is a biblical doctrine. If you're against election, I know this is the way people think. Oh, well, that's Calvinism, election, predestination. People hear those words and they automatically think, oh, that's 5-point Calvinism. No, it's the Apostle Paul. It's Ephesians 1. It's Romans 8. It's in the Bible. Now, there are different views of election, but yeah, I've heard some of Frank Turek's stuff on that, and a lot of it's it's kind of the straw man arguments. Okay, let's see here. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So Thomas brings up that Eric Metaxas last year lambasted people who believe in the pre-trib rapture. Yeah, I heard about that. He called them lazy, like people who believe in the rapture are lazy. They're just sitting around. They're not doing anything. That's what I heard. I didn't actually see it, but I heard he didn't just disagree with the pre-trib rapture. He was like, these people are the problem, which again would fit with the, because a lot of fundamentalists tend to be pre-trib. And what does that term fundamental even mean anymore? It's like, well, you should believe in the fundamentals, but anyone who is willing to fight for truth is going to be labeled a fundamentalist, or as the podcast from Monday, a heretic hunter. Well, I would rather be a heretic hunter than a heretic, or someone who just never brings it up, because for whatever reason, there's some people who just never want to earnestly contend, like Jude verses 3 and 4 say. So, hey, these slurs and labels, they don't really mean a whole lot. Okay, so here's another comment here. And by the way, just to remind you, questions do get priority. There's a lot of comments. There's no way we can get to them all. But Mario says Frank Turek is blind. He supported Charlie Kirk and TPUSA, knowing full well that fake Christian movement is ecumenical, platforming Scientology, Mormons, New Apostolic Reformation, etc. Yeah, I mean, the TPUSA, the strictly political stuff is one thing. But when you do the TPUSA faith and it starts getting into religion and you bring in Mormons, like that should be enough to say, okay, I can't work with an organization that's going to platform Mormons. It seems to be a bridge too far. What do you think? Okay, Kirk had said that he had asked Al Mohler to come on the roundtable and Mohler couldn't come. Kirk, why did you not wait a bit and get the right kind of ECT? Yeah, I mean, maybe that happened, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, Kirk Cameron, I've seen him be dishonest, so I don't take that at face value. Yeah, he could have just changed the date. Make sure, and even if you don't get Al Mohler on, get somebody on who's actually gonna fight back, right? It would have been worth the wait. It might actually have been worth watching if that were the case. Here's another one. I'm convinced this is all part of the goal of ecumenism, to let's all just coexist. Well, that's the whole ecumenical movement, and then interfaith. Obviously, hell has to be the first thing to go, right? And if you're going to get rid of hell, going annihilationism is kind of like the stepping stone, because you don't want to just deny, flat out say, I don't believe the Bible, hell is not true. I mean, some people do that, but typically you're gonna convince more people when you do the cult thing and you redefine terms. You use the same terminology, you say you believe the Bible, but then you just completely redefine what that means. Yep. Vindog Radio says, what do you expect when people like Frank Turek is friends with Doug Wilson? I didn't know that, but I guess it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I saw this Observer comments the Erica Kirk's recent video where she was talking about Charlie Kirk, how he could astral project, and that lights would flicker when he goes into the room because he had some spirit frequency. So if anyone knows like the Stranger Things type of a thing where there's certain kids who are special and have supernatural powers, Erica Kirk, she basically admitted Charlie had supernatural powers. I mean, she didn't use that exact term, but she was talking about astral projecting, and that when he would run at night and he would go by the streetlights, they would go off. When he walked by them, they would go off and they would flicker. So that's weird. That's weird. Doesn't sound Christian to me. but very, very strange. So let's see. Well, this is very kind of you. J Mac was good, but the Lord has given us Pastor Michael Grant. Well, I feel funny reading that, but I appreciate the sentiment. You're gonna make me blush here, but Zach says we call this out and rebuke this because we love him. Right. I mean, we're not doing this because we hate Kirk Cameron. I've told you many times. From up until recently, I've always kind of liked Kirk Cameron. The loving thing to do is to bring admonishment. When you're in error and you're clearly on the wrong road, which Kirk is clearly on the wrong path, yes, you do this motivated by love. The critics will always say that you're not, you're just motivated by these other things, and that is not true because no one can see your heart. God knows. Yep. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Sure Guide to Love says MacArthur had a mega platform that God gave him to squash stuff like this. We have few with big pulpits dealing with this. Yeah, hardly any, really. And MacArthur's gone, right? Sproul is gone. MacArthur is gone. Sproul didn't really deal with this stuff as much, but there's just nobody today that I can think of. I mean, Vodi Bakum didn't have the platform that John MacArthur had, but he still had a large platform, and he would be very firm on stuff like this. You just don't have that person anymore. So you have to rely on, 5 or 10, smaller platforms or tiny platforms instead of one guy who's really doing the work. Because I just don't know if that guy exists anymore. I mean, maybe I'm just not thinking of someone, but yeah. And again, all the big YouTube channels, not all of them, but many of the big YouTube channels they're compromised. I had alluded to this before I went on, 10 minutes before I went on the live stream. Somebody left a comment on my YouTube short. And like, it just seems like you're just being critical of anyone who has a platform. Again, if someone didn't have a platform, I would never hear them. And there are people with large platforms that I really do like. But these guys with big platforms, when they compromise like this, you got to teach people to have discernment and not just say, well, I mean, Frank Turek says that annihilationism isn't a big deal. So I guess, Wes Huff says it's not heresy. So therefore it's not heresy. This is the problem. You follow these guys and they have blind spots at the very least. Okay, we've been going 53 minutes. We got 200 and almost 250 watching. Just a reminder to click thumbs up. Click thumbs up, and also let me play this briefly, 30 seconds. If you would like to hear more content, including verse-by-verse Bible studies, along with expository preaching, don't forget to subscribe to our church channel, Moore's Corner Church. And if this channel has been a blessing to you, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a positive comment. All of those things help with the algorithm and get the podcast pushed out to more people. Also, consider becoming a channel member. Every little bit helps to improve the quality and content of this podcast. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you. So, yeah, I just created that. In case I need to run to the bathroom quick, I can just throw that up on the screen. No, but I needed to scroll the chats trying to get down to the bottom, and it's hard to do and talk at the same time and say something intelligent. But let's see. Thomas Rocha says, add John Barnett to that list. Yeah, I haven't listened to John Barnett in a while, but everything I've heard from him was always good. But again, I think someone like him or any of us would say, just even if you think he's one of the best, you still test the spirits. You still be a good Berean. Robert says Moeller is not sound. I mean, Moeller has his problems, but he did take a strong stance against this. I mean, I know Moeller was doing some woke stuff in the seminary and this and that. That's been well reported. Moeller had that big blow up at ShepCon and cited in sort of with the social justice, sort of. I don't know. I don't remember all the details. Here's a question. Can you tell me if you think that annihilationism is in effect switching out God for a false God? I'm leaning that way. Well, I don't know that annihilationism switches out God for a false God. I don't know that I would phrase it that way, but I've always said that if it's not heresy, like there's a lot of people saying annihilationism is heresy. And I've never disagreed with that. But I've said if it's not heresy, it comes about as close as you can possibly get. Like it is a very serious issue. And that's obvious. It's evident based on people's reaction. Now, whether it means you're swapping out for a false God, I would need to know more of why you think that, but potentially it's unbiblical. So let's see. Thomas Rocha said Spencer Smith provided good coverage of the halftime show. I thought about covering it. Maybe I will. I might cover it tomorrow. I'm not sure. But yeah, Franklin Graham, I did a YouTube short talking about Franklin Graham promoting, TPUSA and Kid Rock. And it's like, I never thought I'd see that. Franklin Graham promoting Kid Rock. Then again, he did promote Voodoo Donuts, a pro LGBT company years ago. He did post some tweet promoting Voodoo, like Voodoo, hello, Voodoo Donut, and they're LGBT affirming, and Franklin Graham is promoting them on Twitter. What's going on here? That was puzzling. And of course, Franklin Graham has promoted Paula White. So I guess nothing, and Pope Francis, so nothing should surprise me. Here's another question. Do you believe, as I do, that Kirk Cameron is intentionally spreading heresy since he's being interviewed by Frank Turek, Michael Knowles, and all the others? Do I think he's intentionally spreading heresy? Well, I think he's spreading something. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously, he would never acknowledge that. And I know this is obvious, but false teachers never admit that they're false teachers. Just like people who are in sin 9 times out of 10, they don't actually acknowledge what they're doing. So my bigger issue, I mean, we've talked about Kirk Cameron enough. At this point, it's not even about Kirk Cameron. It's about all these other guys. It's about Frank Turek. It's about Eric Metaxas. It's about Michael Knowles, who, again, I'll release that podcast in a few days. He's Roman Catholic anyway, but still, it's about guys who should know better. They're going along with what Kirk is doing. So it's just proving what I said, that people are going to help him normalize annihilationism in the church. And that will lead to people in your congregation believing it and advocating for it. And how can you fight against it? Because all the top guys say it's okay. And this is going to create more division. Army Girl for Christ says, love the parrot. I got 2 parrot clips that our moderator sent us. So, you got to have a little fun. So, all right, we've been, almost an hour. So I'm going to try to stick to questions. Are you in agreement that Frank and Kirk should be absolutely 100% avoided for the fallacy of their ways? Kirk, for sure. I'm a little reluctant at this point to say that Frank Turek should be marked and avoided. I have said that about Kirk. Yeah, anyone defending, downplaying annihilationism, I would not recommend them. So let me put it that way. I would not recommend Frank Turek at this point. So, yeah, obviously a lot of you are like, yeah, yes. Here's another question. Do you feel called to possibly invite Kirk Cameron on your show? Well, he would never come on. I have reached out to him, on X, on YouTube, and if you have more than 10,000 subscribers, they do get a personal notification on their phone. So I know that Kirk Cameron at least must have looked at it, but he's never responded to me. So the idea that he would come on my show, yes, I would consider it, but I don't think it'll ever happen. See, I don't have enough subscribe. If I had 5 million subscribers, he would come on my show probably, right? Because there's some way he can benefit from it. He's not going to come on a show when you have 42,000 subscribers. So that's typically how it works. I'd love for Kirk to prove me wrong, but I doubt it. Kid Rock is saying, okay, Russell says that Kid Rock saying Jesus is like what I read in Jude this morning, that they are sensual, not having the Spirit. And what Jesus said, that many will say to me, Lord, Lord, right? Exactly. Yep. I agree. Like if Kid Rock isn't one of these people who say they believe, they say they're a Christian, but they're sensual and not having the Spirit. Like he's not even sensual. He's just vile. I mean, there's still stuff on his social media where he's still acting like a pimp and this and that, and still singing the same perverse songs. So, yeah. Robert says, apologetics is just an intellectual pursuit to these guys. They have head knowledge, and that's all. Another comment with Hellgate. Maybe with Hellgate, we are seeing an example of the future apostate church. All philosophical theology, thanks to Thomas Aquinas and his grandbaby, C.S. Lewis, where everything is opinion with no certainty. Yeah, it's sad when people don't believe Jesus. They don't believe John, but they definitely believe Clive Staples, aka C.S. Lewis. It's like, no, I'm going to stick with Jesus. Thank you very much. Zach says, Pastor Mike, I'm looking forward to your video on ongoing prophecy. I saw Chuck Smith in the Calvary Chapel logo in the thumbnail, going to be good. Yeah, Chuck Smith said that real prophecy, the same type of prophecy that Paul and Timothy used, the true prophecy in the New Testament, that same type of prophecy was happening at Calvary Chapel. It's like, yeah, I don't know about that, but we'll look at it. We'll look at the clips and we'll talk about the problem of ongoing prophecy in the church, because that was obviously one thing that Winger said in exposing Bethel. He said, yeah, but there's still prophecy in the church. Just because Bethel faked it doesn't mean it's not real. I disagree, but we'll get to that on Thursday. Carolyn said, did Eric Metaxas really say he likes drag queens? Yes, he did. Search it on YouTube, or just watch my video, watch our live stream from a few days ago. He most certainly did say that. And him and Milo Yiannopoulos were talking about their favorite drag performers. And one of these guys, Charles Bush, it's just a genius. And it's sad that the younger generation doesn't know about these great drag performances. Yeah, he said that. And I believe it was on his TBN show. He's actually saying this on a Christian network, supposedly a Christian television show, and you're praising up drag queens. My friends, if that is not a picture of apostasy, I don't know what could be. And yet, it wasn't even a blip on the radar, because obviously people who watch him, I guess they didn't have a problem with that. I don't know. It's hard to figure. Yeah, Colleen says, Kid Rock is no Christian. We agree with you, but the Christian Post actually had an article saying that Kid Rock, I guess, is a Christian. He was preaching the gospel, and isn't it amazing? It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, Robert, I repeated this, but I want to give credit where credit is due. I got it from him. Kirk is having growing pains because he left behind sound doctrine, and now he thinks he's fireproof. That's pretty good. You got to admit, that's pretty good. Okay. Yes, great play on words. Bravo. Bravo. Do we have, hold on, wait. Do we have applause? Yep. That is pretty good. Okay. Somebody says, why didn't he ask Ray Comfort to come on the panel? I mean, maybe he did. He said scholars. Ray Comfort, I don't think is considered a scholar, but I think Ray would have been better than Gavin Ortland, certainly. Of course, that's not saying much, but Ray, I think would have, I don't know. Ray hasn't really come out and he hasn't really rebuked Kirk Cameron. I mean, he was clear. I mean, I'll give Ray Comfort credit in this. He was much more clear that he disagrees than Frank Turek. Again, with Frank Turek's interview, I could barely tell that he disagreed. Ray was clear about that. So, credit where credit is due. Okay, we've been going over an hour, and Jeff says, thanks for the video. Well, thank you for watching. And yes, I'm going to scroll down and address only questions now. Of course, I always say that, and then I get sidetracked, right? Okay, Kim has a question. I meant this as a question earlier. Talking of Jesuits, doesn't their creed include killing Protestants? Well, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I think their creed or their philosophy is to advocate and spread Catholicism at all costs. It seems like that is more, but I don't know if they say that they are okay. I don't doubt they said that back in the day. I'd sort of be surprised if they said that now, but maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, let's see. The Spirit doesn't guide us into truth. MG. Who's MG? Is that, am I MG? Who are you talking about? You're not talking to me. I don't know. Must be another conversation in the chat. Let's see what else we got today. What can we put up here? Let's see. We're going to be looking at this passage on Thursday. Okay. Billy Graham was a follower of C.S. Lewis because he was, number one, ecumenical. Number two, believed other religions could be saved. Number three, denied the biblical hell. He certainly redefined it. Sounds like C.S. Lewis's voice was, yeah, I've never seen any clips where Graham is talking about C.S. Lewis. So if you got any, link them. Robert says, Kirk hides from Pastor Mike just like Mike Winger did. Yeah, I mean, these guys don't respond usually. Mike Winger has responded in the past, but not recently. I guess I'm small potatoes. They can just feel like they can ignore me, which is fine. Nobody has to respond, but we're going to continue. Yeah, the Bereans are here. Seems just as surprised. Wow, drag queens promoted on TBN. Man of Sin soon be revealed. The video, it said TBN in the bottom of the screen. So again, it's on my live stream about Eric Metaxas from last week. Go check it out. And don't tell me that was AI, because I saw that video years ago, long before AI was even a thing. So it's not AI. Stu has a question. Have you heard that Kid Rock's next hit is going to be called Lord, Lord? Well, that's ironic. Yeah. Carol Lee Parsons says, yeah, Matthew 7:13 and 14. That's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but is that true? Maybe, are you kidding? I don't know. If he's really doing that, then wow. Question, is Mike Winger to be marked and avoided? Listen, I don't, because the term mark and avoid implies that they're not saved. So I want to be careful about that. I don't recommend Mike Winger. And if you want to know why, tune in to Thursday's live stream. He advocates for the ongoing gift of prophecy. And based on how you define prophecy, okay, if you're talking about preaching, that's one thing. But he's talking about like prophetic words from God, like the charismatic, hyper charismatic not just tongues, which apparently is gibberish to most of these people, but like actual prophecy, as in Sean Bowles getting a direct prophecy and word from God. Okay, well, that was fake. It's all fake. Okay, and I'll reiterate my challenge. We'll end with this. If you say I'm wrong, link to one example of a real prophecy being given today, and no one's ever been able to do it. But this podcast is about Kirk Cameron and and Frank Turek. So yeah, let's pray for Frank Turek, and let's pray that God would open his eyes, the fact that he would actually defend Kirk Cameron. You know my reaction.
What's wrong with you people?
That is the question. Okay, thanks for tuning in. And Lord willing, we'll see you on Thursday's live stream. So until then, hope everybody has a great week.